And 20 years ago today, Osama bin Laden and his twisted organisation ploughed 2 airliners into the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers in New York. A third hit the Pentagon and a fourth crashed in a field after passengers bravely fought back against the pilot and the terrorists and distracted them and prevented them from hitting their target, which was believed to have been either the White House in Washington or the US Capitol building in Washington, D.C. That day, 2,996 people were killed, including the hijackers, and a further 6,000 people were injured in what remains the world's most deadly terror attack. Those attacks unleashed decades of violence, particularly in Afghanistan, and the ramifications are going to be felt for many, many years to come, probably beyond your lifetime or mine. And again, not least in Afghanistan, where the Taliban gave refuge to bin Laden and his fanatical followers, and that, in fact, started the whole thing at the beginning. Those responsible were not simply terrorists. They were religious extremists. They may have claimed that what they did for their God or some religious doctrine or purpose, but in fact, they were evil scum, shaitan, followers of Iblis in the mythology of Islam, followers of the devil. Religion is too often at the root of conflict. And it's not just Islam. If you know anything of your history, you'll know that many wars and a lot of suffering was visited on the people of Europe and elsewhere, for example, Central and Southern America, by the Catholic Church a few centuries ago. Those who seek to dominate or to control others by imposing their religious doctrine on others, rather than respect their freedom of choice, cannot be allowed to do so. They have no such right, and the saying comes to mind that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That comes to mind as very appropriate at the moment. And Joe Biden's extraordinarily stupid and inept decision to withdraw the last US troops from Afghanistan in the way that he did has placed the Taliban back firmly in control in Afghanistan. And make no mistake, and I served in Afghanistan as a diplomat with the US Marine Corps, make no mistake that the Taliban may have improved their public relations, but they have not changed their doctrine. They're not a homogenous organisation, as some people think. Rather, they're a movement bringing together various groups with various sort of purposes, including opium smuggling, but they bring them together with one overall agenda. That's the uniting agenda, and that is to impose Sharia law. Women are required to wear black now, journalists are being beaten, and I predict that this is just the beginning. Moreover, Joe Biden has handed the religious extremists a victory that will embolden them. It has weakened NATO, has weakened the credibility of the United States and our allies, and as a result, has undermined and weakened our own security. In the region, China is already cozying up with the Taliban. Iran has been arming them, and Pakistan, which has been providing Taliban fighters with refuge for 2 decades, is itself now at risk of growing Taliban influence and radicalism. Islamic State is regrouping, and even Al-Qaeda has reappeared in Afghanistan. All of these entities are, I probably don't have to tell you, extremely hostile to the West, to our values and our way of life. And closer to home, the Director General of MI5, Ken McCullum, said this week, and I quote, "There is no doubt that the recent events in Afghanistan will have heartened and emboldened some of those extremists." And he went on to say, alongside the immediate inspirational effect is the risk that terrorists may reconstitute and once again pose us more in the way of well-developed, sophisticated plots of the sort that we faced in 9/11 and the years thereafter. The incredibly inept withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I can't stress, having been there for 27 months, I cannot stress how inept this was. The incredibly inept withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I'm not saying we should stay either, I'm condemning the manner in which the United States, and therefore her allies, left, has made the world a far more dangerous, certainly not safer place. Thanks a lot for that, Joe. Cheers, mate. So as I tweeted earlier today, we've got to ensure that the shield is strong, the sword ready, and the will resolute, so that people may be free. And with that in mind, of course, I look closer to home, and I see what I see does not fill me with confidence. Boris Johnson said today that the 9/11 terrorists failed to divide us. But we are divided. There are those in our country who have expressed support for jihad, some of them strongly and passionately. Not many, a handful. Others pursue identity politics based not what on unites us, but on highlighting what makes us different. So no, Boris, we're not united. We need to be, but we're not. Our army is to be cut by another 9,500 troops by 2025, and the number of our tanks cut from 225 to 148. Even neutral Switzerland has 220, and France over 400. And then there are those who seek to rewrite our history and cancel great figures. The woke leadership of the Churchill Memorial Trust have now removed all photos of Winston Churchill from their website. Goldsmiths College are looking to remove statues of Sir Francis Drake and Viscount Lord Nelson, who was the leading naval commander pretty much of all time, who defeated the menace that was Napoleon, the dictator of Europe, at Trafalgar. And as I thought one GB News presenter put it very well, Sir Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe, but these woke idiots haven't even circumnavigated Islington. And then I can't help, I live in Kent. In fact, I'm speaking to you from Kent, and I can't help but look at our borders. Frequently this summer we've had more people land on our beaches than there are numbers in an infantry battalion in the British Army. The Home Office is all at sea, forgive the pun, at how to stem this flow. There are most certainly solutions, and I myself have successfully assisted numerous governments in other countries, including those bordering Afghanistan, to address some pretty serious strategic challenges of much greater scale than this, and in many ways more complex. But my own government doesn't even want to talk to me about it. The civil service and the Home Office are incredibly insular and frankly arrogant, but incapable. We've urgently got to develop a national border management strategy that unites and drives all efforts of all agencies working on our land, yes, railways, maritime and air borders towards achieving strategically set and agreed objectives at the national level. Presently, there is no such overarching policy to bring cohesion to our border management. And part of that strategy must be to provide an offshore and secure holding facility, waterside of immigration controls, in the same way as we apply the concept of airside at airports, in which, although a person may have landed on British soil, they've not actually been deemed to have entered the UK until they've transited immigration controls. It needs to be the same at our maritime ports. Migrants can be held, screened, and initially assessed in an offshore facility. And from there, those who've no legitimate claim, including those who've transited safe countries, can be returned. We must use all intelligence and operational means at our disposal, which are significant resources, to disrupt transnational organised crime, moving people to the United Kingdom. Intelligence and tactical operations should be launched at all possible points along the extended routes of the people smuggling networks and the migrant networks. Politicians rightly say that these organised criminals who move these people put their lives at risk. Well, they should know that we're going to come after them, regardless of where they are, whether it's in Africa, the Middle East, or closer to home. They need to know that we're hunting them. And our diplomatic activity must be massively uplifted. The Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office needs a kick. It's got to up its game. Indeed, Dom Cummings is right to say that the entire civil service needs reforming. But the FCDO is reactive rather than proactive. They lack boldness and seem to miss the point entirely that part of their job is to protect and secure British interests rather than simply sit back and highlight diplomatic risks. They should be thinking about what they can do to contribute rather than simply reasons for doing nothing. For one thing, the Foreign Office needs to engage powerfully, robustly and persuasively with countries of origin, for the migrants I'm talking about, and of transit, and to get them to act to disrupt that flow. The foreign aid budget should be used to support that diplomatic effort and to support the intelligence and operational efforts. The law also has to be reviewed. Yes, we've got the Borders Bill, but there's more work to be done. They put the cart before the horse in this respect. Legislation needs to be reviewed again and amended to facilitate all the above. And finally, the government has to wake up to the fact that this is beyond the remit and quite frankly the capacity of the Home Office alone. The effort has to involve numerous government departments and has to be led by the Prime Minister or somebody reporting directly to him. You know, I really, really do get it The world, and of course us Brits included, has to give refuge to people fleeing for their lives. That is the right, and it is the proper thing to do, as indeed this country did for 64,000 Belgian refugees in World War I. But that should be considered a temporary measure, and they should be encouraged and facilitated to return as soon as it's safe to do so. And I also bet that not one single person getting into a dinghy in France to cross the English Channel, just out there, has done so because they're actually in fear of their life. Of course they haven't. They're doing so because they can get better benefits here and earn more money here to send home than they can anywhere else. And the French have pointed that out. One of the driving or the pulling forces here is the benefits that we give. And quite frankly, who can blame these migrants? I don't blame them. I blame our soft touch rules that allow it. And in some cases, we're such an easy touch that even with asylum, we seem not to place very many restrictions on things. Albanians, for example, come from a country which is not dangerous these days. Yes, it used to be 15, 20 years ago. I was there as well, advisor to the Prime Minister there. But now it's a safe country. The country is in the Council of Europe, in NATO, and is in talks to join the European Union. So why is it that we in the UK are granting them asylum? The EU provides a humanitarian protection to a very small number, but we grant asylum to 24% of Albanian applicants. That's why they constituted the second largest group of claimants in the UK in 2020. Nearly 2,500. So why? There's no reason. No, the vast majority of those landing on our shores are young men. They come here to earn money to send home. They leave their families at home, in most cases, because they come from societies in which women are not expected or allowed to go out to work. So straight away, we're naively giving refuge to large numbers, over 14,000 have landed on our beaches so far this year, of virtually exclusively economic migrants, many of whom who have social values and come from a culture very different in many respects to our own. And then, what do I see then? I see activists in this country demanding that we respect the values and the culture of these visitors, despite them being often very much in conflict with those values that we have and we've won at great cost in our own country here. Take, for example, the equality between men and women. The rights of women were won in Britain by hard-fought campaigns. Campaigners sometimes faced death and frequently, very often, prison. But in the end, and in the main, there's still work to be done, of course, campaigners for women's rights succeeded. Equal opportunities in this country have become one of our core social values. Those women's rights campaigners of the early 1900s would be turning in their graves now if they could see the liberal left woke subversives trying to accommodate cultural diversity and, at the same time though, refusing to stand up to those who still treat women as though they are lesser beings. There's also the matter, though, of public pressure on our public services. It does not take a rocket scientist, and actually the other day I did meet a rocket scientist for the first time. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that it's simply not sustainable to carry on taking in people so rapidly and in such numbers that as a direct result, our population has increased over recent years by about 270,000 people every year. That's not sustainable when we don't increase the capacity of our public services to match. The system is creaking now, and soon it will break. And then there's the environmental impact in terms of increased concreting of our countryside, and then the need to dispose of ever increasing quantities of waste. But there comes a point when opening our doors, rather than encouraging and facilitating people to stay where they are, is simply irresponsible. It destroys the very fabric of our economy and the safety that attracts these people, these immigrants, in the first place. It also totally unsettles our communities and makes people living in them feel insecure. Not from a hard guns and bullets point of view, but simply emotionally insecure with their environment. And if people do come to our country, then I expect them, as indeed very many do, most do, to respect our values and laws, regardless of the culture and society that they've come from. Those who do, I respect them as well, but sadly not all do, and instead of appeasing them, we should be unbending in our refusal to allow them to erode our own hard-earned culture, rule of law, and relative social stability. And this takes me full circle back to Afghanistan. There's no doubt that we will now face a significant increase in the flow of migrants from there over the coming years. And indeed, I'd argue that having allowed the Taliban to regain control there, we absolutely do have a powerful duty of care towards those who carry British passports and those who have assisted us in the war against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And indeed, as an aside, I was very pleased the other day to learn that my interpreters from the 27 months I was there are safe and well. But regarding others, perhaps we should exercise just a little bit of caution. In 2013, the Pew Research Centre, which is a non-partisan, non-political, not-for-profit organisation which conducts research into the demographics around the world, found that 99% of the population in Afghanistan would support the imposition of Islamic law in their country. Now, the imposition of Islamic law, as I said earlier, is the main and primary agenda of the Taliban. And it is the one issue that unites all of its otherwise disparate parts, all the different groups that comprise the Taliban movement. It is their only real policy. So it's fair to suspect that if 99% of the population support the imposition of Islamic law there, and that that's the primary agenda of the Taliban, that a significant proportion of those who are government and certain human rights groups will be welcoming to this country will be at least sympathetic towards the Taliban in some respects at least. And many may go on at some point in the future to advocate the same here, a right to live by Sharia law. So I am concerned, yes. I'm concerned that in this dangerous world, our shield is weak. Now, I don't blame any immigrant, economic or otherwise, nor do I blame any asylum seeker. I blame our own government. Our shield and maintaining it is our government's responsibility. And I, for one, am going to be campaigning tirelessly. It's going to be a common theme throughout whatever I do, for that shield to be maintained and strengthened. It cannot be neglected. It's got to be strengthened, though, in full respect of international law, because it is that shield that we live in. Because of that shield, that we live in a country in which our rights and freedoms can, must be, and presently are preserved. We've got to look after it.